Welcome to episode 123 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Cormac Neeson from Irish rock band The Answer about their fantastic new album, Sundowners. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Jason Williamson from Sleaford Mods about their new album, UK Grim. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Before we begin, here's Daniel Lynch with what's been happening on the XS Noize website this week.
In the reviews section, From Nothing to a Little Bit More is the second album from the Lathams. Stuart Evans says it enhances the trio's reputation as indie stars in waiting. 4 out of 5. Also in the reviews section, Michael Barron has been listening to Together All the Way from the Levelers Collective. The album is a reworking of some of the band's classic tracks with 2 new songs also included. Daring and courageous, says Michael. And Rebecca Haslam has caught up with Billy Lockett to discuss how battling with addiction and close family loss inspired his latest album, Abington Grove. There's new music on the site from Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds and Roisin Murphy, who is signed with the Ninja Tune label. And Stiff Little Fingers have announced a headline show at Custom House Square in Belfast. Stay up to date at xsnoize.com.
Irish rockers The Answer are back with Sundowners, their first new studio album in almost 7 years. I caught up with frontman Cormac Neeson to talk about Sundowners, upcoming live shows and lots more. So sit back, relax and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Cormac Neeson from The Answer. Hi Cormac, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Hey Mark, good to be here.
I'd like to go back to the start. Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
The first band that I just got into.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of those, I suppose, lucky kids that grew up around parents that had a decent vinyl collection, you know. So there was always music on in the house. You know, anything from Crosby, Stills and Nash, I think, were my dad's favourite band. Anything from that across, I remember Roxy Music would be on a lot, and a lot of that kind of early 80s stuff as well. But I mean, for my own, you know, the first album that felt like it was mine and my parents wouldn't like it, you know, which is a very special moment in a young person's life, I think.
Yeah.
With Sammy's Dream by Pumpkins, actually. I'd been all summer at the Gaeltacht up in Donegal with a couple of friends, and my mate Connor Scullion, I still remember. I was sharing, you know, the bunk beds. He was up top, I was down, and he threw down this Walkman. He's like, listen to this song here, and it was a song called Today by Smashing Pumpkins. It's like this really quiet, delicate intro, and then all of a sudden, you know, an orchestra of dirty guitars and drums and noise lands in, you know, and it kind of blew my mind. It blew my eardrums at the time, but I was hooked, you know, and then went back to Newcastle, and there I think there still is kind of a musical bookshop called Smith's Music in my hometown, and I went straight down and I ordered the cassette of Sammy's Dream, and I went down like every day for about 2 months. It still hadn't arrived in. And geez, I listened to that every detail on that record, round and round and round, you know. And still, when I listen to it now, it's one of those albums that kind of transports you back to a very particular time in my life. You know?
Yeah, it's a fantastic album, but my entry point with the Smashing Pumpkins was probably Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. The double album, it's I think it was the next one. It's fantastic.
Was, and like again, I remember watching Top of the Pops. Do you remember that show, do you? And
yeah, bring it back.
The video for Bullet and Butterfly Wings came on, and I was just like, please be good, please be good. You know, I've just worshipped this band for 2 years, and it didn't disappoint. And yeah, like again, just a few of these moments in your musical journey that you're always drawn back to.
So let's talk about the band. When did the band form?
I was telling you, it's my birthday today. I'm 42 today. When I was 18 when I joined this band. So, whenever that was.
Ages ago.
Does the math add up? It was first year of, I was in Queens, doing ethnomusicology in English, and on the very first, my first ever class, Monday morning, I arrived in late to ethnomusicology and kind of sheepishly took my seat, and there was one other spare seat beside me, and I was thinking somebody's even later than me here. And I think this long hair, this guy with long black hair walked in and sat down, and we were both kind of looking at each other, going, "Aye, so we're the late guys, you know." And kind of leaned over and whispered, "Are you Cormac Neeson?" I was like, "Yes." "How do you know that?" He's like, "My name's Paul Mahan. We've been trying to get you to join our band all summer," because I'd been in the States that whole summer after leaving school, and got home, and my dad was like, "There's been these two boys ringing our house every day looking you to join some band." And it was Paul and Mickey, you know, our guitarist and our bassist, and yeah, that, I mean, put on the spot Monday morning, first day in college, I kind of had to agree to a rehearsal, you know. So next weekend I ended up getting picked up, I'd say, Newcastle bus station by the boys, and out we went, started jamming, and that was the beginning.
And why were they searching for you? Had they heard of you? Were you in another band? Had they heard your voice?
I've been in another band called Vinyl, retro name that it is. Joined, I think it was 14 or 15. A few musicians I was in that band with, I would still be friends with today. You know, in fact, I mentioned Connor Scullion, who played me the Siamese Dream cassette. His younger brother Donal, I would play very regularly with his brother Donal in another band of mine, the Unholy Gospel Band, and my own solo stuff. Donal would kind of help me make it sound half decent, you know. And yeah, I was in a band just with mates from school, and you know, we weren't bad. Like, played a bunch of local gigs. We used to do a gig in this venue in Newcastle called the Mariner every kind of second Friday night, I think it was, and it was one of these gigs. It was meant to be 18 and over, but they just let everybody in, so there was always a good crowd at the gig and great atmosphere, and it was really it was a learning curve, you know. It was a really good moment for kind of cutting our teeth as live players. But like, I have to say, I joined that band and turned up with the guitar under my arm, and there were already 3 guitarists in the band, and that's why I ended up singing, because they didn't need a 4th guitarist, you know. Like, I didn't kind of wake up one day and think my mission in life is to be a lead singer in a band. Like, like the whole singing thing just developed quite gradually and organically, and I suppose by the time I left school, that first band had built up a bit of a local reputation, and you know, truth be told, there probably weren't that many rock and roll blues singers about. So it's not like Mickey and Paul had too many singers to choose first. But yeah, listen, it happened, and here we are.
When you joined the band, you know, how hard was it back in those days, you know, for a band from Northern Ireland trying to make it in the music scene?
Well, there wasn't much of a scene really at all in Northern Ireland itself. You know, you look around now, and it's thriving, obviously, and there's management companies and publishing companies, and big conference events, and people from all over the world coming into Belfast to share their knowledge and check out the bands that are up and coming here in this city right now, and that's amazing. It wasn't really like that at all now. Back in the late 90s, early noughties. In fact, our attitude was always kind of, and I think probably it served us quite well at the time, was like, let's kind of just kind of try and see a bit of the bigger picture here. There were a few bands at the time that were very much buzz bands, if you like, and you could very quickly get caught up in the local nature of the scene, if that makes sense. If everybody in whatever small venue you're playing is telling you you're amazing, all of a sudden you start to believe it, and you're acting like a rock star before you've released your first record. That never really seemed to work out well for bands that took that attitude. But we were always kind of dead set on getting over to London and getting management in London, and kind of using our local gigs as a springboard into that world, and then hopefully using that as a springboard into the world. And we built up a pretty strong local following, again, not by being a buzz band at all. Like, rock and roll was not very cool at all in those days, but we believed in it and we had fun doing it, and a lot of people seemed to have fun whenever they came down and watched us do what we do, and eventually there was a bit of a stir. We were getting some decent kind of support gigs, and sure enough, one day we got a call from a manager in London that wanted to represent us, and came over and watched us play in the Empire. We used to play in the Empire Music Hall a fair bit, and he then took us over, organised a bunch of showcase gigs in London, and that's where we got hooked up with various record labels, one of which released our first two albums, and it all kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, well, your debut single, Keep Believing, received critical acclaim and led the band to be named the Best New Band. You got the Best New Band award at the Classic Rock Awards, and your debut album, Rise, was very well received. So how did it feel when the band started receiving all that recognition?
It felt great. It felt like all our dreams were coming true, really. Like, I clearly remember in the early days of the band, my sole mission in life was to get to play a gig in London. Get a gig in London, I'll be happy. Like, and then you get the gig in London, and you start to build a bit of momentum, and all of a sudden you want to play more gigs in London, and then you want to play more gigs in London and maybe get a record deal, and then you want to play more gigs in London, get a record deal, make an album, and see the tour the world. Who knows where the ceiling is then. So it all, like, we kept kind of getting a bigger taste as we went along, and that, like I say, it feeds a great sense of momentum, a great energy within the band, and it just spurs you on to continue to, I suppose, have the discipline and the focus to make sure that you're getting up every night and playing every gig like your life depends on it, and getting into the studio and just trying your best to make memorable, special music. Like I'm sure most bands do, and sometimes you get the run of the green, and a bit of luck comes your way, and you get offered a particular gig, and it's just about, I suppose, taking your opportunities at that point, and trying your best to keep pushing forward and keep developing and keep expanding what it is you do and who you are.
The band certainly gained a reputation as an amazing live rock band. You went on to support the Stones, Aerosmith, You spent time on the road with AC/DC on their Black Ice tour, which took you around the world. That must have been an amazing time being on the road with probably the three biggest ever rock bands on the planet. So what did you learn from that?
I learned that that's what I want to do with my life. Is just, kind of put yourself in a position where you're playing exciting gigs, and making music for a living, but I suppose, like, particularly with AC/DC, we did a year and a half with those guys, and what inspire me every night was watching the sheer joy and passion that those guys got from what they were still doing all those years later, like in their 60s, getting up and again, like I mentioned, playing every gig like your life depends on it. They were doing that every night, even then. Even though, like, they could have got up and read the Bible, and the crowd would have been eating out of the palm of their hands. It wouldn't have mattered. Like, but yeah, like there was still a real focus and discipline to how they went about their business, and the business being entertaining thousands upon thousands of people every night with amazing rock and roll songs.
Well, the answer went on to make 6 more albums before calling it a day and going on a hiatus for 7 years. So what happened? Why did you decide to just sort of take a break for a while?
There's no real short answer to that, but I'll try and give you one. From the release of our first album, Rise, it had very much been a case of record a record, tour the record, write the next one, record it, tour it, write the next one, record it, tour it. And that's, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, but it kind of had got to the stage when it maybe felt like the fire wasn't burning quite as brightly as it needed to sustain, I suppose, what it is that we are, and to create the kind of music that we always strive to create, which is fueled by passion and hunger and joy in what we do, and it just, like, there were a whole bunch of reasons, to do with different stuff going on in our lives and whatever others. There were a lot of different small things. It was never a case of, like, I can't stand the sight of you, or did you just throw a bottle of beer at my head? It was never that. But I think we all felt, having finished touring Solace. I think the last tour we did was a tour with the band Mr. Big around Europe, and we kind of knew at that point that we were gonna be breaking for a while, and it was just one of those things. Like, it needed to be done. It wasn't done with any kind of set in stone plan in relation to when we get back together, which was kind of scary because, like I say, it's a band that I've been in since I was 18. We had thousands of amazing experiences, lots of got through lots of challenges and tricky things, and personal stuff and professional life. We've been through all of it. So to step away from that, and I suppose not have the answer as one of the central kind of pillars of our identity, of my identity, it was a very weird feeling, but it had to be done. If we had it just for the sake of it, got back in and did the whole writing of the next album, record the next album, tour the next album, I don't know if that next album would have really set the world on fire, or even kind of held our interest for long enough to keep the band going as it should do, forever. So yeah, a break was what was needed, give me a chance to go in, make a solo album, and suppose write different kinds of songs, and kind of deal with the work that I was making a little more kind of introspectively, and give all the guys a chance to go away and work on different projects, with different genres, different artists. And to be honest, like those different perspectives and different creative experiences, I think, have really very much benefited the record that we did eventually get round to making, Sundowners. And that album, it's I don't know, it's definitely up there with our best work, in our opinion. And it wouldn't have been that if we had just blindly just kept on going without questioning where it was going 7 years ago.
So after 7 years, who was it that said the words, "Let's get the band back together"?
I think it must have been the CEO of our now. We got a call out of the blue from our own management saying, "Listen, we've had this quite interesting call from Australia. There's a record label called Golden Robot, and they're big fans of the band. And they want to see you guys make another record. What do you reckon?" And it did take us all by surprise, because we were kind of a good couple of years into our hiatus at that point, so everybody had gone down different routes, and we're kind of in the middle of living, I suppose, different lives to what we had been used to for the previous kind of 18 odd years or whatever. And but we all agreed it was definitely worth a jam, so we organized the first session and got back in the room together. And whilst I wouldn't say it was an immediate, like we'd never been gone situation, I think we had definitely worked through some stuff, and particularly on a creative level, kind of get into some kind of rhythm. But we found it, and once we had it, we ran with it, and obviously COVID happened in the middle of this whole process, but like I think we had already established a very strong foundation for the record that allowed us to then do what the whole world did during COVID and work on stuff remotely and via Zoom sessions and different kind of finding different ways to make the magic happen, I suppose.
And how was that? You've been away for 7 years, you haven't recorded together, but all of a sudden COVID happens and you're having to write and record in a completely different way than you've ever been used to. What was that like, doing it remotely?
I quite enjoyed it, because like, and I think we all get used to it and made the best of it. But what was great about it was like whereas like the way the answer would always have worked was we get into the room, turn up really loud, jam through a load of riffs, sing a load of stuff over the top of it. Sometimes so loud I don't have a clue what I'm singing. Guys don't have a clue what they're playing. But we record it all, and then we kind of hone in on the ideas that we thought were good. Flick it back to at 2 riffs ago, there's something good happening there, or whatever, and then we take it away and start kind of chip it into shape, But COVID dictated we actually did it the other way around. So like we were all coming up with ideas in our own little studios and in our gardens or wherever, the spare bedroom or whatever, and we'd be emailing through little bits of song ideas, and I might get an idea from Mickey and an instrumental thing, and then I'd get it up on the desk and start singing some stuff over it and send it back to Mickey, maybe with a few suggestions as to how we could move out of the second chorus idea into whatever else. And so like by the time we did get back in the room together, whenever the travel restrictions would lift, we'd be like, right, let's get in. We were all coming in with quite a load of kind of pretty well-formed ideas, and then jamming through them. Okay. So like there was kind of a lot more focus on the songs and the craft than maybe that there at times there might have been in the past, So it made for a very kind of efficient use of our time whenever we did get those rare opportunities to get back in the room together. And I just think kind of across the album, the songs themselves are quite strong, and I think that's one of the happy accidents of COVID forcing us into this particular way of working.
Well, it is a fantastic album, and there's some amazing songs on it. So actually, let's talk about some of the songs. The album kicks off with the rumbling grooves of the title track, Sundowners. It's a brilliant way to begin the album.
Aye, I'm glad you think so. We had a couple of drunken conversations about starting the album with that one whenever we were recording in Middle Farm, and I think the vote was definitely split for a while, but I have to say now I was a firm believer in that one being a good one to open the record, because it kind of, I suppose it asks the most questions of the listener on the record. It takes a while to get going, and it kind of just kind of the groove just creeps in, and it's the longest song on the album. It was all recorded completely live, that one, so there's no overdubs. Just a big distorted vocal and very kind of real dirty bottom end throughout the record, a bit of random harmonica playing. It's quite trippy and psychedelic across the board, and probably not what I suppose people who've been following the band or whatever, probably not what you might expect to hear whenever you stick the first piece of music on by The Answer in 7 years, and I love that, and I want this album to have enough surprises on it for people that know the band or are familiar with the band, and I think there is enough kind of experimentation and there's a whole bunch of freshness across the record that hopefully gives the listener something else that they haven't yet heard from this band, alongside what is clearly very much an album that kind of, I suppose, encapsulates the soul of the band as well. But Sundowners, the song itself, I think definitely epitomizes what we were trying to do in that regard.
The first track released from Sundowners was Blood Brother. Did you think that song represented the album best?
It's really hard to pick one song from an album that best represents an album. But I think it's a really good taster. I think it's a good song to kind of get people interested in what else might be on there. It's quite a compact little tune, but there's a looseness to it as well, and you're very much listening to a four-piece rock and roll band happy to be back in the room together, and there's a celebratory feel to it all that hopefully kind of rubs off on the listener. So yeah, we felt that as a first single that was kind of never in doubt.
My favorite track on the album is California Rust. You sing "I heal quickly like some smooth California rust." What can you tell me about that track?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that you don't get rust in California.
That's why I'm asking.
Because of the climate. And I say that like a real smart arse, and I'm sure your listeners are probably going, everybody knows that. But yeah, that song began as, again, I was talking about like little bits of riffs and song ideas that just appeared in your inbox on a Monday during COVID. Paul sent through that, like, kind of the riff, kind of verse, chorus, middle 80-ness of it all. Paul had already created and sent through with the working title California Rust. And I actually initially thought, oh, he must be just taking the mick. That's clearly the name of a Led Zeppelin song or something. So I messaged him going, I love this. By the way, what band's song is California Rust? He's like, oh no, it's just a title I came up with. It's like, no way. Can I use that? Like, can I go away and write a whole lyric around that title? He's like, aye, absolutely. So then I Googled it, and it was sure enough, you do not get rust in California. And I had the first like lyric that was, or the I kept singing the chorus melody with the line, I heal quickly. Again, it was just something, it was just kind of an image that a line that appeared in my head inspired by the music, you know. So I healed quickly, like Smooth California Rust just seemed to all fit in beautifully, you know, and that's kind of where lyrically that all went from there. It's like, it's a really good example of like the answer whenever we're working as a unit and doing what we do best, like finding this middle ground whenever we're all working together and bringing the best out of each other. You know, Paul coming up with a killer riff and inspiring a lyric, and then the melody moving from there, and everybody, you know, Mickey and James coming in with their input, and eventually, you know, the end result is this kind of well crafted rock and roll tune. And like, yeah, that's one of my favorites as well, actually. And there's a bit in it whenever there's like a load of female gospel backing vocals come in, and what I love about that section is it wasn't actually finished. Whenever we came into the studio, we kind of had that little section of the song. It kind of happens after the guitar solo before the last chorus, and we just left it open for kind of hopefully some magic to happen in the studio. And whenever we had the gospel singers in, the girls and myself just started kind of throwing this call and response vocal melody idea at each other all around the one mic, just having a great time. And that's what ended up on the record. And that was kind of like the last little piece of the puzzle for that particular song, you know. And again, like little moments like that were happening throughout the recording sessions. And it helps kind of feed this lovely spontaneous feel to the album as well. It's not like it wasn't too planned out. You can over plan whenever it comes to making you know, kind of soulful rock and roll or whatever it is. Like it can never become too kind of scientific. So there was lots of little moments like that along the record that helped kind of keep things loose and weird, you know.
Yeah, I love it. I also love Living on the Line. It's very upbeat and radio friendly, and in the video, it looks like you all had a great time in the video doing shots and walking around Paris blocked. How many shots did you all do in the video?
I think that video's winning any BAFTAs anytime soon. Yeah, we did a fair few now, and what I would say as well, we shot it across 2 days, and one of them in Paris. Whenever we were all kind of stumbling about, having a good time to ourselves. But then there's an opening shot scene whenever we're all sitting around, like kind of a poker table type thing, and we all start doing shots and getting drunk. And I'm the only member of the band who's drinking real alcohol there that day, because the other three were landing in whatever airports we were flying into and had to drive home. I didn't. I said to the director, is like, make sure there's real shots of whiskey and real shots of tequila in my glass. Like, I want this. I want at least a bit of realism in there, you know. And I had to shoot that opening shot scene 5 times. So by about 2:00 in the day, I had, you know, 3 whiskeys, a couple of tequilas, a few beers, and I remember ringing my wife on the way back to the airport in Bristol. And it was only about, I think it was 3:00 in the afternoon. And she was talking. And she's like, hold on, what's wrong with you? You sound like you're completely steaming. And I was like, I am. I was doing real shots of tequila. I did, like, you know, drink half a bottle of whiskey there before lunch and whatever else, you know. So I had a really serious dirty hangover the next day now. But it was good fun at the time.
Yeah, and in the video, you're in the Harp Bar in Paris, and the graveyard. Was that the Père Lachaise?
Yeah, and we were kind of breaking the law whenever we were shooting in there, because you're not even allowed to take photos in that graveyard. So we only found this out when we arrived, and the security guards came straight over, going, "No, you know, you're not allowed to do this." So we're like, no problem, and then we ended up sending like the kind of director's help PA away with what looked like all our cameras, but the director held on to one inside his backpack, and we were doing like all this kind of stealth filming around the graveyard with like people keeping watch for security. And yeah, again, I suppose like the whole plot of the video should probably explain for the listeners is that we begin in this late night dive bar, and we fall out of the door of this place, and the bright lights of Paris, and we have to kind of navigate our way over the course of the day to a gig. We're kind of initially very lost and very hungover and don't know where we're at. So whenever we were talking about different, because Paul lives in Paris, so we were asking Paul, where all could we shoot here? And one of the first places he mentioned was that graveyard, and we'd all been there before, to visit Jim Morrison's grave and Oscar Wilde's grave and things. And it's a real, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Easy Rider, but they're in New Orleans taking acid in this graveyard, and it's one of the trippiest things you'll ever see on a movie. And it always struck me as having that kind of vibe to it all, So yeah, we good fun kind of getting chased around that graveyard by the Parisian security guards.
The album finishes with Always Alright, and I love it when the piano kicks in. It's around about the 5.5 minute mark, and then the gospel backing vocalists come in. That's really, really amazing. It's a great way to finish the album.
Aye, again, that little link section, because it moves from it begins as this kind of almost like a Chris Stapleton type Americana type song, and it's pretty at odds with the rest of the record. Mickey and I had worked up that first half of the song as a standalone idea again during COVID, but we both agreed that we needed to kind of open it up to the floor, to the band, to try and kind of bring more, I suppose, upbeat rock to it all to make sure that it tied in with the whole album. So you've got a very much kind of A-B situation. You've got the first half of the songs is very different to the second half, but the gospel choir kicks in, like you say. You've got that amazing kind of Dirty Rhodes electric piano type sound that kicks in. We were kind of going for like a Small Faces type feel there, but the transition between those two parts again was something we didn't entirely know how we were going to do it in the studio, and it wasn't until we got in this amazing keys player, and we were all kind of thinking we could do like a Small Faces type thing here, and the guy latched onto it immediately, and it makes for a really good kind of upbeat celebratory closing song to the record then.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I love that, when a song just it goes in a different direction and you're not expecting it. What song on the album do you feel most connected to?
The one I always like, we've obviously had this album, been living with it now since last summer, really. We started getting mixes through. And if I ever had somebody in the car with me, I'd be like, do you want to hear a wee song from the record? I would play them a song called I Want You to Love Me from the album. I think it's 4th or 5th on there. It was like our third single that we released there recently. Second, not sure, second thing. And yeah, it's just a song that it's just got a great groove to it. It's got you can hear every member of the band expressing themselves on it. It feels like an answer song, but it feels different as well. There's a wild kind of 32 bars whenever the whole band just speeds up ridiculously so, which is something we would never have really allowed to happen before. Like, no, you can't go that far off the click track or whatever. But we let it happen, and it works, and it just feels live and magical. And there's a lot in that song that I think really captures the spirit of what this album's all about.
The Answer are on tour in March and April, but unfortunately, your tour van and gear was stolen at the Premier Inn outside Birmingham while en route to tour rehearsals. So what happened, and have you been able to get anything back?
So we weren't even there. That's one of the annoying things about it. But our gear was getting transported from one lockup to another across England to get ready for the start of the tour, which is kicking off the 16th of March. Ironically, on St. Patrick's Day, the day of the album release, where are we playing? Birmingham, the very town where our van was nicked out. But just our tour manager parked it up at a hotel, went in to get a night's kip, and emerged the next morning, and it was gone. And there was a load of gear on it. Both James, our drummer, and my luggage were in the van already, because we had packed up the van here in Ireland a couple of days previous, and we just threw in all our luggage in. So lost all my clothes. I lost like my in-ear mold monitors, which obviously are no good to anybody, except me. There's a Les Paul was lost, like load of good gear. Kind of, if you let it would be quite soul destroying. But listen, I was pretty pissed off now for a few days, as we all were, but I'm over it now. You can't dwell too long on the shitty stuff that happens to everybody, along the way. So nobody died. None of us are going to go hungry. We got to just very quickly buy a load of clothes, get and get our heads together for the tour, and to be fair, I think we're at that place now. So, there was a weird incident there last week whereby somebody found there's a great response online, amongst like the music community. It was fantastic. Like, it was quite inspiring actually. But somebody found one of the tour manager's toolboxes in a wood very near where the van was nicked from. A load of beer cans lying around it, which would suggest that the guys, are not like any kind of hyper intelligent criminal masterminds, like, but celebratory beer. Of course, the jokes from some of our loyal fan base was like, "Oh, did they steal your beers as well?" Like, but that's been the only bit that's turned up. But you never know in the future. But like, as far as where our heads are at, it's gone, and we move on.
Well, I hope the tour goes okay. You're about to release this incredible album. You're going to go on tour. The band is back. So what do you hope to achieve with the answer going forward?
I suppose would like to just keep pushing on. Like, it's always been the mantra of the band, is to just try to keep going, taking what we have further. I think we've made an album that it'll sit well with people that are already into the band. But I just really hope that the album gets out there so that people that aren't into the band or haven't heard of the band at least give it, a minute and a half of their time to see if they like what's going on, and maybe they want to taste some more, So yeah, hopefully it's a good kind of, just a good opportunity to really, I suppose, get the band up and running properly again, and push on and keep, use it as a foundation to just get out there and play lots of great tours and make more good music. Like, and beyond that, who knows? Like,
well, I know we're coming up to near the hour mark, so just a few more questions. These are more sort of quick fire questions. I like to ask my guests the following questions, Cormac. If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
Probably standing on the Ulster Hall, having just sold the place out at the end of one of the legs of the AC/DC tour. We did, a bunch of our own gigs at the end. A couple of days before Christmas, selling out the Ulster Hall. We were posing for kind of like a selfie thing with the crowd in the background. We got everybody to shout out Belfast Baps at the top of their lungs. It just kind of something very beautiful about that moment.
Belfast Baps.
Just the Ulster Hall was always that kind of the promised land whenever you were growing up as a musician in Northern Ireland. So getting to sell that one out was a big moment. So we've played lots of stadiums and arenas all over the world, but that one was definitely right up there.
For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
I've already mentioned, obviously, Siamese Dream. Definitely, something about the sound of that record just brings me back to, I don't know, drinking my first bottle of Buckfast and smoking stuff I shouldn't have been smoking halfway up the mountains. Whenever I was really way too young to be doing any of that stuff. But that's definitely one of them. But I have to say, Therapy, Trouble Gum, would have probably been like the next record that I just would have been obsessed with whenever I was like a kind of adolescent teenager. And again, every song in that record just reminds me of just feels like I was just discovering how to live my life for the first time. That was the soundtrack to it. And one of the best gigs I was ever at was Therapy in the Empire, actually, on my 19th birthday. And obviously it was well after Trouble Gum, but whenever I hear that album, I think of whenever I was kind of 14, 15, picking up a guitar for the first time, but I also think about one of the greatest gigs I was ever at, which was sold out Therapy show in the Empire Music Hall.
Here's one for you. What song or album is your guilty pleasure?
I have a few now. I do have a few. Let me think. Guilty pleasure. I don't know. I mean, it might be. Let me think. I'm trying to think of a proper guilty pleasure. Like, I've loads of stuff that I'd be into that obviously wouldn't be rock and roll. I don't know. Is a bit of Dire Straits guilty enough? Probably not.
No, definitely not.
No. Geez, I need to look through my my bloody music, Apple Music. I'll be good friends with Johnny Brady now. I've actually got a good Irish country story. If that's any use to you. I know this isn't answering the question, but Johnny Brady, he's an amazing artist and singer, but very high up in the Irish country scene, and he invited me to play Brady Fest one year recently in Galway to do not to do like the kind of the shit kicking midnight shift or anything, but to do like an in the round in the afternoon, like a Nashville style in the round. It was all very tasteful and good audience, and it's great, But I had actually woke up that morning with food poisoning, so I really wasn't feeling very well. So like right after the gig, I went up to my hotel room and just kind of lay low, and fell asleep quite early. I was woke up about 3:00 in the morning. There's this banging on my hotel room door. I was like, who could that be? I don't know anybody in this hotel in this town. So I got up, like, first initial reaction, because it was just woken out of a deep sleep, was like to just open the door, but something stopped me from doing that, and I decided to look through the keyhole first to see who it was, and there was this stark naked dude just standing the other side of my door, like knocking, like he really he should have been in this room, you know. I didn't even engage. I just very quietly stepped away from the door, turned the light on, kind of went back to my bed with the pillow over my head till the knocking stopped. Like, so yeah, that was my one and only foray into the Irish country music scene. But listen, I mean, I do like my fair share of cheesy pop music. I mean, even that. I have to say that Beauty and the Beat song. Like, I know I'm going to regret even mentioning this in the podcast, but that most recent one from the main man himself, Justin Bieber. There's something about it. Something about the production. You know, like I'm a great believer in giving every song a chance and finding the goodness in all of it. So yeah, I mean, if it's a good song, if there's good production, I'd be into it. Like,
well, that's what I always say. A good song's a good song, no matter who it is, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Cormac, I really enjoyed that. That's my questions finished. Time is up. We're near an hour into it.
Great.
Really had a good time. Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to mention before we wrap up?
No, just that. I mean, we're obviously looking forward to playing our first Belfast show in a while. That one sold out in about 3 minutes, which is great, and it's going to be a good tour all around. You know, heading around the UK, over to Belfast, over to Europe for a bunch of gigs. Albums out on St. Patrick's Day. We're going head to head with U2. There's only going to be one winner there, so we all know. And no, apart from that, listen. Hopefully, all your listeners at some point will at least give Sundowners a chance. I think you'll enjoy it, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, again, I'm really, really enjoying it. So I wish you all the best with it, and happy birthday for today.
Thank you, mate. Thank you very much.
Nice talking to you.
All right, man. Enjoy
Cheers,
that.
Cormac. Have a good rest of your night.
Enjoy that Morgan Space.
Oh, well, I'm going to have another one.
All right, bud.
Cheers.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye.